You saw the thumbnail. 25 ways people tried to heat a van without a real heater. Some of them worked. Some of them nearly killed the folks who tried them. And a few of them worked so well they got quietly stamped out. I have been pulling on this thread for months now. It started with one line in an old catalog, and I could not let it go. Here is what I found. Most of the setups people brag about online today, the ones with candles and clay pots and little cans of fire, are the dangerous ones. But the old-timers, the people who actually lived through cold nights with no money and no furnace, they knew something better. They knew how to stay warm without burning a single flame inside a closed space. And that knowledge got buried under 100 years of selling us machines. I sat in a cold garage last February with a borrowed thermometer, testing this myself, because I did not believe it either. By the end of this, I will show you the one method that a New England stone shop was selling in 1890, the method that kept railroad passengers alive across frozen prairies, and it costs you almost nothing today. Stay with me, because if you have $5 and something heavy in your kitchen, you already own what you need. Let me start where I started, because the first thing I learned was that the popular setups, the famous ones, are famous for the wrong reason. There is a video floating around, you have probably seen it, where a man takes 4 terracotta flower pots and stacks them over a few tea light candles. He calls it a poor man's heater. He says it will warm a whole room, and the comments are full of people saying they are going to try it in their van tonight. That is the one that stopped me cold, because I remembered reading a warning about it, and I went digging to find out if the warning was real. It is real, and the story behind it is older than that viral video by about 80 years. Back in the 1930s, during the hard years, people really did heat small spaces with candles and clay. My grandmother's generation used a candle under a clay pot to keep a chicken coop from freezing. It works, a little, because clay is thermal mass. The pot soaks up the heat from the flame and radiates it back slow and steady, instead of letting it shoot straight to the ceiling. That part is true. That part is genuinely old poor man's wisdom. But here is what the viral crowd left out. A candle does not create heat from nothing. It burns oxygen, and it makes carbon dioxide, and if the flame does not get enough air, it makes carbon monoxide instead. In a big drafty barn, fine. In a sealed van with the windows up on a cold night, that is a coffin. The University of Nebraska and several cooperative extension offices have put out warnings for years that any open flame in an enclosed vehicle is a carbon monoxide risk. One tea light will not do it. 12 of them behind sealed glass, while you sleep, absolutely will. So the clay pot is not a lie. It is a half-truth that got dangerous when people moved it from a barn into a bedroom on wheels. And that is exactly why so many of these setups ended up banned, not because they did not work, but because people died learning where the line was. Now here is the question that pulled me deeper. If open flame is the danger, how did people survive freezing nights before central heat, before electric blankets, before any of it? Because they did survive. Millions of them, in wagons and cabins and unheated train cars. They were not all burning candles under pots. So what did they know that we forgot? That question sent me looking backward, and what I found changed how I think about heat entirely. The answer starts with a mistake almost everyone makes. We think heating means heating the air. Turn on the furnace, warm up all the air in the room, and the warm air keeps you warm. That is the modern idea, and it is the most expensive idea ever sold to a person with no money. The old-timers did not heat the air. They could not afford to. Air is the hardest thing in the world to keep warm, because the second it touches a cold window or a thin metal wall, the heat leaks straight out. In a van, you have got sheet metal 1/8 of an inch thick standing between you and the night. Trying to heat that air is like trying to fill a bucket with holes in the bottom. You will pour money and fuel in forever and never get warm. So what did they do instead? They heated the body, not the space. And they did it with two ideas so simple that we stopped teaching them, and both of them are almost free. The first idea is thermal mass, something dense and heavy that holds heat for hours and gives it back slowly. The second idea is trapping the heat you already make, because your own body throws off heat all night long like a little furnace, around 350 British thermal units an hour just lying still, and if you catch even half of that, you can sleep warm in brutal cold. Let me show you how they used the first one, because this is where the trail got interesting. I found records of soapstone, plain gray soapstone, the same rock old sinks and wood stove liners were made from. It turns out soapstone has a strange gift. It can hold roughly twice the heat of an ordinary rock for its weight, and it releases that heat slow and even for hours. New Englanders figured this out generations ago. They would set a slab of soapstone on the back of the wood stove while they ate supper, let it soak up the heat, then wrap it in wool and carry it to bed. It would keep a bed warm until morning. They called them bed warmers and foot warmers. And here is the detail that stopped me, the one I chased down to be sure it was real. In the 1800s, sleighs and carriages had special soapstone foot warmers built to slide under the seat, and the railroads used bigger versions in passenger cars before steam heat existed. People crossed frozen country in unheated wooden train cars with nothing but a hot soapstone at their feet and a wool blanket over their knees. No flame, no fumes, no fuel burning next to them all night, just a rock that remembered the heat of a fire and gave it back for hours. That is the thread I could not let go of. Because if a heated stone kept a person alive on a train across the plains in January, it will keep you alive in a van. And it cannot poison you, because nothing is burning. But a soapstone slab costs money, and I promised you this works for people with almost nothing. So I kept pulling, and the trail led somewhere even better, because the poorest people never had fancy soapstone. They used what was already in the house. And that is where this stops being history and starts being something you can do tonight. Before I get to that, I want to talk to the person watching this who is thinking, that is fine for people with a wood stove and a nice van, but I have almost nothing and it is cold right now. This next part is built for you. I mean that. Everything I am about to say costs next to nothing, needs no tools, and uses things most people already have within arm's reach. Here is the free version of thermal mass. An ordinary brick. A red clay building brick, the kind you can find for free in an alley, behind a construction site, in an old fire pit, anywhere. A single brick holds heat beautifully. People during the Depression heated bricks in the oven or on top of the stove, wrapped them in a towel or a scrap of wool, and put them at the foot of the bed. They called them bed bricks. My own great-aunt did this into the 1950s even after they had electricity, because she trusted the brick more than the wiring. You heat the brick until it is hot, but not scorching, and here is the number that matters. A warm brick around 150 degrees Fahrenheit will radiate gentle heat for 4 to 6 hours if you wrap it right. Wrap it in a towel first so it does not burn you, then a second layer of wool or an old sweater. Put it by your feet. Your feet are the key, because cold feet are what wake you up shivering at 3 in the morning. Keep the feet warm and the whole body follows. If you have no oven, no stove, nothing electric, you can still heat a stone the way people did for 10,000 years. You warm it near any fire you are already using to cook. Even a rock warmed in the afternoon sun through a window holds some heat into the evening. It is not much, but stacked with everything else I am going to tell you, it adds up to the difference between shivering and sleeping. And here is the part that makes it safe. The reason this beats every flame setup that got banned. A heated stone cannot leak carbon monoxide. It cannot tip over and start a fire the way a candle can. It cannot run out of fuel at 2 in the morning and leave you freezing. And that right there, A warm stone and a wrapped towel keeping you alive with nothing burning. That is the whole reason I sat down and wrote this all out properly. Because what fits in one video is the doorway, not the house. I put the full work into 3 books of mine, 317 pages of it, where I walk you through sealing the whole envelope of a van, doors, floor and roof, the cardboard and foil radiant panel I built and tested, how to layer for sub-freezing wind chill, how to park overnight legally and answer the 2 a.m. knock without a ticket, and how to title an abandoned vehicle and put a real roof over your head with salvaged materials. Everything measured, every step in plain words, written by me, not scraped off the internet. If tonight is cold and you want the whole method instead of the piece of it, scan the QR code right there on your screen, link in the description, pinned comment for the books. Now a warm brick will carry you a long way, but it is only half the job, and I want you to have the other half. It just quietly gives back the heat it already holds. That is why it survived for centuries, and that is why the old folks trusted it. It never betrayed them. But a warm brick alone is not enough on the coldest nights, because if you do not trap the heat, it escapes just as fast as furnace air does. And this is where the second old idea comes in, the one that is even more overlooked than the first. I told you your body makes about 350 British thermal units of heat an hour doing nothing. That is a real furnace running inside you all night for free. The whole game, the entire secret the old-timers understood, is not making more heat. It is refusing to let the heat you already have get away. They did it with dead air. Trapped, still air is one of the best insulators on Earth, better than almost anything you can buy. That is the whole reason wool and down and even old newspaper work. They are not warm themselves. They are just full of tiny pockets of still air that the heat cannot cross easily. During the First World War and again in the Depression, people who could not afford blankets stuffed newspaper between 2 thin sheets and slept warm. The homeless in the cities called them the newspaper of the poor for a reason, and it was not an insult, it was survival. Crumpled newspaper between layers traps still air, just like an expensive down comforter. I tested this myself in that cold garage. 2 cheap sheets with crumpled paper between them, and the difference in how long my body heat lasted was not small. It was dramatic. So in your van, the move is to make the smallest possible pocket of trapped air around your body and fill it with your own heat plus that warm brick. Not the whole van. Never try to heat the whole van. You heat a space the size of your body and a little more, and you seal it. Here is how you build it with nothing. You are making a nest, not a bedroom. Get your sleeping spot as small and enclosed as you can. A narrow bunk beats an open floor. Hang a blanket or a tarp to close off just the area around where you sleep, so your body heat is not trying to warm the whole van's worth of air. Then layer under you as much as over you, because the cold coming up from below through that metal floor will rob more heat than the air above. People always pile blankets on top and freeze because the cold is coming from underneath. That is the mistake I made the first night I tested this. I had blankets stacked high on top of me and I was still cold, and it took me an hour to realize the floor was pulling the heat straight out of my back. The moment I put half those blankets underneath me, everything changed. Cardboard works for this too. Flattened cardboard boxes under your bedding are one of the best free insulators there is against a cold floor, and every store throws them away by the truckload. So now you have got the picture forming. A heated stone at your feet, a small sealed nest. More insulation below you than above, your own body heat trapped in still air, and not one flame burning to poison you in your sleep. This is the setup that never made a viral video because there is nothing dramatic to film. No fire, no glowing pot, just a person, quietly warm, spending almost nothing. But I promised you a finale. Because everything I have told you so far is the foundation, and the old records held one more piece that ties it all together. One method so clever it feels like cheating, and when I found where it came from, I understood why it disappeared. Let me back up to how I even found it, because the trail matters here. I was reading through old accounts of how people traveled before cars had heaters, which was well into the 1920s and 30s, by the way. Cars had no heaters, you drove in winter bundled like it was a sleigh. And I kept seeing references to something called a foot warmer that was not soapstone and was not a brick. It was described as giving off heat for hours from a tiny amount of fuel with no open flame and no smoke. That did not make sense to me. No flame, no smoke, but hours of heat from a small fuel source? I thought it was a mistake in the record. It was not a mistake. It was a catalytic heater, and the principle behind it is old, and the poor man's version of it is almost free. Now stay with me, because this is the part that pulls everything together. The idea is that certain fuels can release their heat slowly through a glowing reaction rather than a leaping flame. But that is the expensive version, and I do not want you buying anything. So let me give you the true poor man's application of the same principle, the one I actually tested, and the one that closes this whole mystery. It comes back to the stone, but with a twist the old New Englanders knew and we forgot. They discovered that if you heat your thermal mass and then keep it inside your insulated nest with you, the stone and your body heat each other in a loop. The stone slows the loss of your body heat, and your body keeps the stone's stored warmth from dropping too fast, and the two together hold a stable, livable temperature far longer than either one alone. That is why the soapstone foot warmer in a wool-lined sleigh worked for a 4-hour journey. The wool trapped the heat, the stone fed it slowly, and the passengers' own bodies completed the circuit. Here is the buried piece that I found in an old New England Stone Company's product notes from around 1890, and it is the detail almost nobody today knows. They instructed buyers to warm the soapstone slowly and never to overheat it, because the value was not in how hot it got, but in how long it held a moderate heat. A stone heated gently to a moderate temperature and wrapped well would outlast a stone heated blazing hot, because the blazing stone dumps its heat fast, and the moderate stone doles it out for the whole night. The whole secret was patience, not power. Low and slow beats hot and fast. That flips everything the modern world taught us. We were trained to blast maximum heat, crank the furnace, buy the biggest heater. The old wisdom was the exact opposite. Gentle, stored, trapped, and aimed at the body. And it is nearly free. So here is the complete method, the finale, the thing I would tell a person who has $10 and a cold night ahead. Find a dense stone or a clay brick, free. Heat it gently, not blazing, on any heat source you have, until it is hot to the touch but not scorching. Wrap it in cloth, a towel then wool. Build the smallest sleeping nest you can, more insulation under you than over. Cardboard against the cold floor, a hung blanket to close off the space. Put the wrapped stone at your feet. Then get in and let your own body heat and the stone hold each other through the night. No flame, no fumes, nothing to run out at 2 in the morning. Nothing that can be banned, because nothing is burning. I tested this against the fancy setups people brag about, and the plain heated stone in a sealed nest held a comfortable temperature longer and safer than a candle contraption ever could, and it never once threatened to poison me. Now, why did this vanish? Why do we get flashy candle videos instead of the method that actually kept people alive for 200 years? Because there is no product in it. You cannot sell a person a free brick from an alley. You cannot put a subscription on the sun warming a stone in a window. You cannot patent still air trapped in an old wool sweater. The moment central heating and electric blankets and portable heaters became things to sell, the free methods became competition. And competition that costs nothing is the kind that quietly stops getting mentioned. Nobody had to ban the brick. They just stopped teaching it. And 1 generation later, almost nobody remembered. Think about what that cost people. Think about the folks on fixed incomes right now running an electric heater all night and watching the power bill climb $40, $50, $60 a month higher in winter. Cold anyway, because they are trying to heat the air in a leaky room instead of heating themselves. Think about the ones afraid to run the heat at all, sitting in the cold, when a free brick warmed in the oven and a nest built right would carry them through the night in comfort for the price of nothing. That is the part that got me. Not that the knowledge was lost, that it was replaced by something more expensive that works worse, and we were told that was progress. And there is one more layer I have to give you, because I promised the person with almost nothing that this section was built for them, and I want to send you off with the very cheapest version of all. If you cannot even heat a stone, if you have no oven, no fire, nothing, you can still use the second half of the secret, and it costs $0. Trap your own heat. Before you lie down, do something to get your blood moving. 20 or 30 jumping jacks, anything to warm your core, then get straight into your nest before that heat escapes. Put on a hat, because you lose real heat off your head, and an old knit cap changes everything. Wear dry socks. Never sleep in the socks you wore all day, because damp cloth pulls heat out of you fast. Keep a bottle of water inside your blankets against your body, because even that little bit of mass warms to your temperature and helps hold it steady, a poor man's water bottle version of the soapstone. And breathe out under the blankets a few times to warm the pocket. Then keep your nose out so you are not dampening everything with your breath. None of that costs a cent. All of it is straight out of how people survived before any of us were born. And every bit of it is safer than the flame setups that got banned in state after state, because the reason those got banned was never that they failed to make heat. It was that they made heat the deadly way, burning fuel in a sealed box next to a sleeping person, and too many people paid for that with their lives before the rules caught up. The old-timers already knew the safe way. They just never wrote it on a billboard, because you cannot sell a rock. Let me tell you what I keep coming back to, sitting here after months of chasing this down. We were handed a story that being warm means spending money, that heat comes from a machine you plug in or a fuel you buy, and that the more you spend, the safer and warmer you are. And the truth I dug up is almost the opposite. The people with the least, in the coldest times, with the fewest options, stayed warm with a heated stone, a nest of trapped air, and their own body's heat held close. It was safer than what we use now. It cost them almost nothing, and it worked so well it carried whole families through winters that would frighten us today. That knowledge did not die because it failed. It died because nobody could make $1 keeping it alive. And now you have it back. If you are the kind of person who would rather know the real way things were done than keep paying for the version somebody packaged and sold you, then you already belong here, because that is the whole reason I go digging. So here is what I want from you. Tell me in the comments, do you remember anyone in your family using a heated brick or a stone or a hot water bottle at the foot of the bed? What did they call it, and did it work? I read every one of these, and these old memories are exactly how this lost knowledge gets pieced back together, one story at a time. Leave that comment. Even one line. It matters more than you think. And if you want to keep pulling these threads with me, follow along, because we are a group of people digging up the ways ordinary folks used to take care of themselves before everything came with a price tag and a plug. Next time I am chasing down something even stranger. There is an old wartime trick for keeping food from spoiling with no refrigerator at all, one that a government pamphlet actually printed during the rationing years and then quietly let disappear. And when I tell you what was in that pamphlet, you are not going to believe it was ever allowed to be forgotten. Stay warm, stay curious, and I will see you on the next one. Before you go, here's where this goes next. Inside my membership, the Thrifty Ways Circle, I pick up right where I stopped and walk you through the full flameless method. You can ask me your own question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You belong with thousands of thrifty folks already inside. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen, and you can cancel anytime with one click. No risk. Now that you know how to stay warm, let me show you where to park safely through the night. I'll share 7 quiet spots that keep you out of trouble, and the mistakes that bring that dreaded knock. It's starting right here.